The billionaire CEO had ordered hundreds of expensive meals in his life, but that afternoon, he ordered something money could never buy, the truth. And when a young delivery girl arrived at his penthouse with rainwater dripping from her hair, trembling hands, and a small paper bag pressed tightly against her chest, he deliberately accused her of stealing from him. He expected anger. He expected excuses. Instead, she quietly opened the bag and revealed something that made the most powerful man in the city lose the color in his face. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can change a person's life and everyone deserves a second chance, please like this story, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Sometimes one small act of kindness can become the reason someone keeps going. His name was Cassian Veyre, a billionaire known for building one of the largest technology companies in the country. He lived on the top floor of a glass tower overlooking the city, surrounded by luxury, security, and people who always wanted something from him. Yet behind the expensive suits and cold expression was a man who had slowly stopped trusting everyone. Employees lied to impress him, business partners betrayed him, and even people who called themselves friends disappeared whenever his money was no longer useful. Cassian had convinced himself that people were only kind when they wanted something in return. That afternoon, he decided to test a stranger. He placed an unusually expensive watch inside the delivery bag and ordered lunch from a small restaurant several streets away. His assistant, Marcellus, knew exactly what Cassian was doing but said nothing. When the delivery arrived, a young woman named Soraya stood outside the penthouse door. She was barely 24, wearing a faded delivery uniform, cheap shoes soaked through by the rain, and a helmet with a cracked visor. Her face looked exhausted, but she still offered a polite smile. Cassian took the food, looked inside the bag, and immediately frowned. The watch was gone. He raised his voice and accused Soraya of stealing it. For a moment, she simply stared at him as though she had been slapped. Then she lowered her eyes and said she had never touched his watch. Cassian told her that security cameras would prove she was lying and threatened to have her arrested. Soraya's hands began to shake, but she did not run. Instead, she slowly reached into the pocket of her uniform and pulled out a small envelope. She explained that while waiting for the elevator downstairs, she had noticed a watch lying beneath a chair in the lobby. She assumed someone had dropped it, so she picked it up and placed it safely in an envelope. She had intended to give it to building security before leaving. When Cassian opened the envelope, his watch was inside. But there was something else beneath it, a folded hospital receipt and a child's drawing. Cassian looked at her suspiciously and asked why she carried a hospital receipt. Soraya hesitated before admitting that her younger brother, Ryan, had a serious heart condition. Their mother had died years earlier, and Soraya had become the only person supporting him. She worked long shifts delivering food during the day and cleaned offices at night. The hospital had given them one final deadline to pay for his treatment. She had been riding through the rain because every delivery brought her one step closer to keeping her brother alive. Cassian expected her to ask him for money. She didn't. Instead, she quietly apologized for being late and said she needed to leave because another delivery was waiting. Something inside him shifted. He asked why she hadn't simply kept the watch. Soraya looked at him and said that being poor had never given her permission to become dishonest. She could lose money, sleep, comfort, even hope, but she refused to lose the person she was. Then she walked away. Cassian stood frozen beside the open door. For the first time in years, someone had stood in front of him with nothing to gain and still chosen honesty. He called Marcellus and ordered him to investigate Soraya's situation, not to expose her, but to understand it. The investigation revealed something heartbreaking. Soraya had been working nearly 18 hours a day. She had missed meals so her brother could eat. She had sold her mother's jewelry to pay hospital bills. And that morning, she had borrowed money for fuel because her delivery motorcycle was almost empty. But the biggest surprise came when Cassian discovered that Soraya had once been a university scholarship student. She had been studying engineering, but after her mother's death, she abandoned her education to care for Ryan. Her dreams had not disappeared because she lacked talent. They had disappeared because someone she loved needed her more. That evening, Cassian went to the hospital himself. He found Ryan asleep beside the window, holding the same little drawing Cassian had seen in the envelope. It showed a boy standing beside a girl under a bright yellow sun. At the bottom, written in crooked handwriting, were the words, "My sister is my hero." Cassian had spent years buying paintings worth millions, yet that child's drawing was the most valuable thing he had ever seen. He paid the hospital bill anonymously, arranged for Ryan's treatment, and offered Soraya a position in his company's community development department, not as charity, but because her determination and intelligence deserved an opportunity. When Soraya discovered what he had done, she cried. Not because someone had rescued her, but because for the first time in years, she realized she didn't have to carry everything alone. Months passed. Ryan recovered. Soraya returned to university and began studying engineering again. Cassian, meanwhile, changed in ways his employees could barely recognize. He started eating lunch with his staff, listening before judging, and personally funding programs for workers facing financial emergencies. One evening, Soraya visited his office with a small box. Inside was a simple wooden frame containing Ryan's original drawing. She told Cassian that her brother wanted him to have it because he believed the billionaire was a superhero. Cassian smiled and said he wasn't a superhero. Soraya replied that superheroes weren't always people who saved others. Sometimes they were simply people who finally learned how to care. Cassian looked at the drawing for a long moment, and his eyes filled with tears. He had thought he was testing a delivery girl that rainy afternoon. In reality, she had tested him. She had shown him that wealth could buy comfort, but only kindness could give a life meaning. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps stories like this reach people who may need a little hope today. And before the ending, write, "Kindness always wins," in the comments if you believe that a person's circumstances should never decide the value of their heart. Years later, Soraya became a successful engineer and eventually founded a program that provided scholarships to young people who had been forced to abandon their education because of family hardship. Cassian became one of its biggest supporters. But whenever reporters asked him why he had created the program, he never mentioned the millions he had donated. He simply pointed to an old wooden frame on his office wall. And inside that frame was a child's drawing of a sister standing beneath a yellow sun. Because the billionaire had thought he was testing a poor delivery girl. What he actually discovered was the one thing his fortune had never been able to buy: a reason to become a better man.